Welcome to News Punch, coming to you live from our North London studio. My name is Tunde Alabi. It's a pleasure having you on the program tonight. Today on News Punch, I've got a very special guest, Simon Hughes, Right Honorable Simon Hughes, former deputy leader of the Lib Dem here in the United Kingdom and the current Minister of State for Justice, joining me live in the studio here in London. Right Honorable, you're welcome to the program, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here again.
And on the show today, we'll be taking a look at issues around some of the policies of the Lib Dems. We'll be taking a look at issues around education. And of course, very many people will remember the campaigns of the Lib Dem leader, Nick Clegg, in the last elections, the issues around education, and now this has had some effect on them. We'll be taking a look at on this, and Right Honorable Simon Hughes will be giving us some answers as to how the Lib Dem have actually, grown from that level to whatever level they are at the moment. We'll also look at the economy, the biggest issue in the United Kingdom. We'll take a look at the housing, and of course, you understand that Right Honorable Simon Hughes is the Member of Parliament for Bermondsey. Yeah, and so most of, and Bermondsey also has a huge number of the ethnic minority, and we'll be taking a look at its impact within that constituency. And then we'll open the phone line for you to also join us on the show today. You can tweet us or send us an email, bentelevisionuk@gmail.com, and the phone line will be open for you to be part of the program. You're welcome to the show this evening. Just grab a seat, a cup of coffee or tea, and enjoy the show. Right Honorable, you're welcome to the program one more time. Let's start on the issue of education. It's no longer news. The broken promises of tuition fee has led to so much damaging effect on the Lib Dem. Has the Lib Dem moved on from this damaging effect of these broken promises?
Look, the reality is that if you're in a coalition, if we'd won the election, there would have been no problem. We would have been able to implement all our policy, which is true of any party in any country. If you win an election, you have a majority. If you don't win an election, and no party won the election, Labour lost the election, Conservatives didn't win the election, so we formed a coalition. First point to make is that the only coalition that was available in 2010 was with the Conservatives, because Labour's number of MPs and our number of MPs did not make a majority. So people say, oh, why did you do a deal with the Conservatives? The answer is that was the only way of giving a stable government to the country at a time of huge economic crisis. That was the first thing. Recession had happened, if you remember, the real difficult days of 2009, and we came to power at a time when Europe was in economic crisis. So difficult decisions had to be made, and we couldn't deliver our policy. We wanted to get rid of tuition fees, we couldn't deliver it. But the deal that was done was one that 4.5 years later has delivered more young people going to university from families, well, firstly, record numbers ever going to university, but more young people from families where nobody had gone to university in the previous generation than ever before. And that includes many, many families of African and Caribbean heritage and from other black and minority communities where mum and dad had never been to university. And the figures are clear, there's no argument about that. Now, how's that happened? It's happened because every youngster, when they look at their career choices, going through school, going through the years from year 7 up to year 12, they think, is university an option? And they know, they've got the message, that if you go to university under the present system, you don't pay any fees up front, you don't pay any fees when you're there, you only pay if you start earning more than £21,000 a year. And it's graduated, so if you earn £22,000 a year, you pay literally a few pounds every month, but it comes out of your wages. You don't have to find it out of your pocket, it comes out of your salary. If you're not working, you don't pay. If you're off sick, you don't pay. If you're looking after your family, carrying responsibilities, bringing up babies, you don't pay. If you're taking a year off, you don't pay. And after 30 years, you stop paying anyway. So even after 30 years, that's the end. So young people have understood, parents and grandparents sometimes think tuition fees means pay up front. You've got to find the money. That's not the case, absolutely not the case. And it's come back into the debate because Labour put it on the agenda. the changes they suggest will only help very rich graduates. They won't actually help the graduates on the lower incomes, and that's absolutely been assessed. Second point to make, when we took the decision in coalition as a government to say we had to negotiate an upper limit on fees, there were two other things that were in the minds of ministers and in the minds of all of us. Firstly, if you go to university, forget the fees for a second. What about the living costs? You have to live and try and get a job in the holidays, work, that many students do. My view is that the universities of this country should spend any money they've got in scholarships and bursaries and grants, your viewers and everybody else, with the cost of living, with food and accommodation, because that alone, but that has to be paid, and if you pay it, then the debts mount. That's the first. We're trying to help, and then in the next Parliament we will seek to help specifically with living costs for students, yeah, which will take the pressure off the family budget. Last point, what we've done in the Western world is we've realised that we as a country had stopped making things pretty well. With manufacturing, we stopped training people, technicians, to pilots, to car mechanics, to do all the job. And so we've put loads of money into apprenticeships. And we've created between 1 and 2 million more apprenticeships. We've just had our 2nd millionth new apprentice. And that means there are loads of youngsters now who have BTEC or sitting guilds or national vocational qualification, NVQs, who are going out there into the world of work with the equivalent of degrees, but they're not academic. So what we've ended up doing is having a much more balanced economy. And I would say that in spite of the fact we couldn't deliver the education policy and higher education we wanted, we've actually delivered a very much more successful future for youngsters. One last point. One of the Deputy Prime Minister's key policies was to make sure children from poorer families, starting school, had extra money given to the school for their educational help. What happens? Poorer families often, maybe one parent at home, maybe 2 parents at home, and to be fair, in many of the black families, the parents are really motivated about education, really motivated, and they have Saturday schools for their children and schools run by the church or schools run by the mosque or whatever. But often they don't have all the educational opportunities. So we put extra money. It's nearly £1,000 per student who comes from a family on lower income, and that has seen already a turnaround in the success of youngsters in primary schools and in secondary schools. And if you really invest in that, childcare, nursery education, free places for 2 to 4-year-olds, 16 hours a week, free nursery care, then you make a difference, because education in the years 2, 3, 4, 5 has huge benefits in the years 5 to 11 at primary school and 11 to 16 at secondary school. So I think when history comes to look back over this government, Liberal Democrats will have been seen to contributed greatly to improving the economic performance, particularly of those from less advantaged, less rich, less wealthy backgrounds.
The greatest criticism against this policy is the fact that these young ones will be living at that university or, well, the educational sector having debt placed on them.
No, but they don't have that. This is really important. Yeah. If you go tomorrow and borrow from your bank and take out an overdraft or a loan, it has interest payments. And they will expect you to repay it all the time until you've repaid the whole thing. If you go to do a course at the university up the road here, Middlesex University, near here, or the East London University, or South Bank, London South Bank University, my constituency, there's no debt at all, in the sense that you get your course paid for, you get your 3 years paid for, you then come out with your degree. Until you start working, then none of that course fee gets paid back. Say the course fees were 6,000 or 7,000 a year. You don't pay, you as a student don't have to pay that unless you're in it. It comes out, it's effectively a graduate contribution. It's a graduate tax, effectively. It is a payment. If you're lucky enough to get a degree and get a job, then it comes off the top of your wages. You pay some tax, you pay a bit of national insurance, and then it comes off. So it's not a debt in that sense. If you're not working, you don't have to pay anything. If you're off sick, you don't pay anything. If you're taking time off to have a baby, you don't pay anything. If you're taking time off to look after your mum or dad at home, you don't pay anything. And after 30 years, it stops. You can't be asked anymore. So it's not a debt. That's why the phrase, it's sometimes argued to be a debt, but it's absolutely, I hope all your viewers understand. There'll be lots of youngsters who today in London and elsewhere in the country probably will have received in the last 24 hours their offers of their secondary school places. Yeah? And they will have older sisters and older brothers who will be at secondary school. And many of them will have offers now from colleges to go to this autumn, and they will have conditional offers, 3 Cs, 3 Bs, or whatever it might be, to go to Brunel University or wherever. They should know that if they decide to take that route, if they want to, I'm not saying they should, but if that's what they want to do, if they want to go and do an engineering degree at Brunel, or if they want to do a chemistry degree at Imperial College, or if they want to go to University of Manchester or Brookes University in Oxford, if they want to do that, they can do that. But nobody's going to ask them for any money to go. They're not going to be asked for 1 penny before they take up their place. They're not going to be asked for a penny in their second year or third year, and they can get loans for their living costs. But we want to help them more with the living costs so that they're not getting into debt for that. So I hope nobody will say no to thinking of university if that's what they want to do, and nobody will say no to apprenticeship. Last point, we have still in this country some of the best universities in the world, in the international league tables, with America and the UK, and our academic output. There are many, many, many families who will be watching this, who will have very bright children, who will have gone through school, secondary school, go to university, then want to do a master's and a doctorate and go off and become doctors or become scientists or whatever. Absolutely, we need people who want to do that as a career, head teachers, teachers. So I would say to everybody watching, we Liberal Democrats, who regard education as one of the most important commitments we can make, have said that in the next Parliament, if we are in government again, we will protect the education budget from cradle to college. We will not have it cut in actual terms, in real terms, or in any other terms. That will be protected, so that all the families watching tonight can know that if they are interested in education, the money spent by the state in England on education will be guaranteed in real terms. It'll keep up with inflation, be guaranteed in real terms. And that's primary school and secondary school, but it's also college, and it's also more money from the state to give you free childcare for 16 hours a week before school. And I think that's something people will value and understand.
Students from the ethnic minorities seem to face high competition in terms of getting places in, say, the top 10 universities in the United Kingdom. The level of that admission seems to be not to be.
That's a real issue. Accept that. That's a real issue. And the body that runs university admissions, which again many of your viewers will know, UCAS, University Central Admission Service, has said that the top 20 universities that are academically the most highly qualified, Oxford and Cambridge are at the top, Imperial College London, for example, must do much more to recruit people from black families.
Why did they find difficult initially?
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because often, 2 things happen. Schools which have a tradition of sending people to Oxbridge prepare their people to go to Oxford. Private schools, many of them, will prepare their people. So they start training them very young. Schools, say in Southwark, or I went to the Globe Academy the other day, which was visited not long ago by President Obama when he was in London, the Globe Arc Academy at Elephant and Castle, or the Walworth Academy, which held the Global Girls Summit the other day. Fantastic school, done really well. And there are other schools. Until recently, they didn't tell their students that they could also go to the top universities. If they thought of university, they'd say, well, probably one of the less academic universities. When I went to the Globe Academy the other day, on the slogan that you go into the main courtyard of the school actually has, for all the youngsters, preparing young people for university. That's one of the 2 objectives of the school. Now, they won't all want to go to university. They may want to do apprenticeships or go to work for the family business. But we have changed, and what the Russell Group was saying, what UCAS was saying about the Russell Group, you have to, if you're King's College London, for example, which has been trying quite hard, you have to go out of your way to reach the schools where traditionally people thought, well, no, they'll never get to Oxford or to King's College London. We'll send them to a less academic university. But just one last thing, really important. I've got London South Bank University is the biggest university in my patch, plus the University of the Arts, and I have student residencies for the London School of Economics and for King's College London. London South Bank University may not be the most academic university in the country, but it has, I think, the highest ratio of success in people going into work, getting jobs in the first 6 months or year after leaving university of any university in the country. Last year's figures, from what I remember, and also very, very high success rate in getting people into engineering, for example. So youngsters thinking of universities should look at the course. You should never do a course you don't want to do, you're not motivated to do. You should, and I'd say to everybody, don't get pushed if you're a youngster. Don't get pushed into doing something that your family tell you ought to do. If you don't want to be a lawyer, don't go and do law. If you want to do music, go and do music. Yeah? Do something that really works out you in it. Yeah. Because if you're really enthusiastic, you'll do much better. If it's a slog, you won't do it. But look also at the success of that university in getting people into the sort of work you want to do. If you want to be a nurse, look at the universities that do nursing training, but also look at the universities that have the highest success rate at people getting into nursing qualifications afterwards, because that's a really important assessment of where to go for education. But there's one last quick thing. Some universities, King's has been very good, have targeted, particularly actually, African youngsters, because when you looked at who was going to train to be a doctor or a dentist and a vet, which are longer than 3-year courses, relatively few black youngsters were applying. Yeah, a lot of Asian youngsters, a fair number of white youngsters, but fewer. So what they did, they said, we've got a problem here, and some universities now run access courses to help you get from the grades you may have, which may be, say, 3 Cs, to get the grades to be able to start the course of medicine. And they've had 10 years of blinding success in actually moving youngsters, mainly from African and Caribbean families, mainly African families actually, to do courses that before they thought they wouldn't have the capability to do it. And so what's happening? We're training many more young black doctors and young black dentists and young black vets than we've ever done before, as well as the traditional skills which, to be fair, African families would often have deployed, which is for business and finance and commerce and all those commercially related courses. So I would stand by our record. We've been hugely successful as a country. Universities are booming, where people are coming. Now, there's a big difference between us and the Tories, the Conservatives. The Conservatives want to restrict the number of foreign students coming to this country to study. We say that's completely bad politics, bad economics, and bad education. Because if somebody comes, whether they come from China, or whether they come from France, or whether they come from Nigeria, or from the Ivory Coast, or whatever, and they come to do their degree here, and they get a degree from, I don't know, Newcastle University, or they get a degree from Birmingham University, yeah? They're much more likely, even if they go home, they're much more likely to want to do business with this country. They're much more likely to think positively of this country. Whereas if we say, no, this is all too much, immigration is all too much, we don't want any of these people coming, what do? They don't not go to university, they go to Russia to university, or they go to America to go to university, or they go somewhere else. So we, Liberal Democrats, are really clear that we want to encourage students to come, and we would take the student numbers out of the immigration figures, so that when we have these big national debates which UKIP want us to have about immigration figures, that we don't include the student numbers. Because students aren't coming for life, they're coming to study. Now, if they then want to stay on, they have to apply for a visa and other things. But they shouldn't be counted in the figures. So there's a big difference between us and the Conservatives. We want to encourage international students to come because we think it's good for our universities. They pay more money, puts more money into the kitty, helps pay for the universities and the courses. But we are also very keen to make sure we continue to support students and requiring them to pay nothing if they want to go to university when they're there, and only pay if they're earning at least £21,000 a year.
I do know that as a matter of finding, there was a report that says foreign students from West African countries, especially from Nigerians, annually spend about £250 million on British education. But that takes us to the issue of immigration. The government policy on immigration has been considered to be very harsh and not very favourable to students.
I hope.
And the black community, African black community.
I hope your viewers can distinguish between government policy and Conservative Party policy. Yeah? The Conservative Party said we want to bring immigration down. No, absolutely. The Conservative Party at the last election said we want to bring immigration down to 100,000 a year net. That is not government policy. That's Conservative Party policy. Yeah, never been government policy.
But that's the policy that Theresa May has been pursuing, bringing down the immigration to that level.
It is not government policy. It is what the Tories would have liked to be government policy, but we refuse to agree to it. Yeah, we refuse to agree. Now,
but Theresa May is pursuing that policy.
Theresa May has announced today that she wishes the Conservative Party at the next election in May to continue to have a commitment to that immigration limit. The Conservatives can argue their case if they want to. Apparently there's a row in the Conservative Party about what the limit should be. We don't think that you can set those arbitrary figures. Yeah? There are two sorts of immigration into this country. There are those who come from the European Union, which is a common travel area, effectively, where if you're an Italian or a Dutch person or a Spanish person or a Swede or a Pole, you can come and work here and you can come without a visa, and we can go there. And 3 million Britons have gone there. And that actually, interestingly, includes quite a lot of black families who started life in Europe, in Holland or Sweden, and are now living here. Yeah? If you're from outside the EU, Commonwealth countries like Ghana or Sierra Leone or Nigeria or other places, South Africa, then yes, you have to have permission to come here. So we can, as a country, we can fix the limits. You can't fix the limits. Most immigrants are EU immigrants. Yeah? And we're a party that is very clearly in favour of the EU. Why? Because we believe it's the biggest trading area in the world. Yeah? And it's better to be in a big trading area because it's good for growth, it's good for the economy, it means that companies invest in the UK from elsewhere in the EU, it probably supports 3 million jobs. So we want trade. Big difference again between us and Conservatives. Now, we're also much clearer about this than Labour. Labour have been pretty quiet about their policy about the European Union. We are enthusiastic internationalists, big supporters of the Commonwealth, but also big supporters of the European Union. And to answer your direct question, we don't believe we should impose arbitrary immigration controls that are unrealistic. We should have border controls. We should be tough on our border controls. And the way of being tough is to make sure that if somebody comes in with a limited leave to remain, with a visa, then we check that they go out at the end of it. And if we don't, we follow that up. And I spend much of my life, as my constituents know, dealing with immigration and asylum cases, many of them successfully, to get family reunions for people who come from, could be West Africa, could be Bangladesh, could be somewhere else, and making sure that within the rules people can stay. And if people come, if a youngster comes, for example, may have been trafficked in or may have been smuggled in by an uncle or an agent and is there in the UK on their own and has been here since they were 16 and has been here and they're now 30, then I will work very hard to try to make sure we don't send them back if they've got no family back, say in Sierra Leone after the Civil War, when their mum and dad have been killed in the Civil War. And I've spent lots of time trying to help people who've come from circumstances where going home is not an option because there's nobody back at home. So that's a humane use of the discretion that ministers have I'm not the minister responsible for immigration, but the minister responsible for immigration has a discretion to allow people in if there's a good case. And although there should be tough rules, there are always good cases. And if you have a good advocate, if you have a good member of Parliament, my Liberal Democrat colleagues in Leeds and in Manchester and in Bradford and in Birmingham and I in London, I have 7 parliamentary colleagues in London, spend a lot of our time helping immigrant communities, making sure they have the rights. Now, you hinted at one other thing, if we just pick this up before we finish this section, and it's this. There still is discrimination in this country in job applications, in my view. And we, therefore, as a party, support name-blind job applications. Because I'm clear that some people, when they see the name Ibrahim Bangura, for example, on a job application, will not take them on, whereas if they saw the name Roger Smith, they would let them through to an interview. Because there is an inbuilt discrimination against people who are perceived to be either, in that case, a Muslim or a Muslim and clearly an African, or whatever combination might be. It doesn't only apply to Muslims, it could apply to Christians or people of other faith. So we want name-blind applications, application process, and we want specific sectors to have at least one BME person on the shortlist. So we want company boards by the end of this decade to have at least one BME person on the company board. We want football, sports clubs, when they recruit their managers and their coaches. I think we have probably 2 coaches, black coaches in the Premiership. I can't remember exactly, but almost none. We have many more players. We want here to apply what happens in the States with their teams, which is that you have to, if there are applicants, put a BME person on the short-list.
Is this a policy?
It's a policy. It's a policy
being pushed by.
It's a Liberal Democrat. These are in our. We've just produced the document. These are in our commitments for the general election. We're about to finalise our manifesto, and we make a commitment for name-blind applications for public office, for positive action to make sure that applications include people from our black and minority communities, for public sector appointments, for boards of companies, and for specific sectors which give role models like sport. Very clear about that. That doesn't mean to say that you have positive discrimination when you make the choice. It would be quite wrong for somebody to be given a job because they were black and born in Nigeria over somebody who was clearly more qualified, who was not black and not born in Nigeria. But often when you get the person into the interview room, they will perform brilliantly. The problem is getting into the interview room. And there will be lots of people at home tonight, young people, other people, who will be making lots of applications but never hearing anything back. And that's really depressing and really frustrating. And we want to make sure, therefore, that there's the best opportunity of everybody's application being considered on its merits. Now, there are other things we can do. We can help with mentoring. We can help with making sure people can do CVs much better. We can help with interview skills much better. There are lots of things. And peer group mentoring and support for young people in particular to make sure they can present themselves, to give themselves the best chance of working in the media like you do, or working in broadcasting, or newspapers, or working in business, or working in retail. But absolutely we're keen that we have to take action, because we still have a latent discrimination in many cases, and Parliament doesn't yet look like Britain in terms of the numbers of black and
I need to go on a break now, but before I go on this break, maybe we should go on this break, but I'd like to put this question to you. Earlier on we were talking about immigration, and you're the Minister of State for Justice. A huge number of the people in the detention camp are probably people from the BME community, Africans, Asians, and very many of them are rotting away in the detention camps. They've not been deported. They've got no access to lawyers, and quite a lot of bad things happening to them. I would want you to answer this. Let's go on this very short. And when we return, before we start taking calls, we'll talk about detention camps and people being.
We don't have any detention camps. We have prisons, and we have some detention centres, but we don't have any detention camps.
Detention
but we
centres.
we can talk about them, and we can talk about something that's been announced by one of my colleagues in Parliament today, which is about making sure that we are absolutely as tough as anybody can be on any discriminatory behaviour or inappropriate behaviour or wrong behaviour by anybody working in any prison or any detention centre, and there should be never any treatment of anybody in any detention centre or any prison which is worse or different because you happen to be black or Muslim or anything.
Let's go on to a short break now. Let's go on to a short break now. I say I've right Honourable Simon Hughes in the house. We're back and you'll be able to be part of the program. Don't go away.
Every day starts with a vision. And as the saying goes, if you believe you can fly, you will. At Arik Air, we are determined to make good of every promise we make, maintaining operational excellence, an efficient fleet, and team friendliness. Flying demands the best of safety procedures, and that is why we are abreast of global standards delivered by top technicians using some of the most advances. At Arik Air, we don't just believe in flying, we are passionate about the flying experience. An experience that safely delivers you at each destination, feeling comfort and pleasure. An experience which truly keeps you closer to your dreams. This is our vision, today, tomorrow, and beyond. Arik Air, Africa's fastest growing air.
All right, you're welcome back from that short break. I see our right Honourable Simon Hughes in the house, the Minister of State for Justice. And before we went on that short break, we're talking about people in detention centres. Quite a lot of people, especially on issues of immigration, being detained.
Yeah.
Let me deal with 2 years.
Let me deal with that. One of my responsibilities is I'm responsible for all female offenders in England and Wales. So all women in prison. I'm obviously the Liberal Democrat in the Ministry of Justice, and therefore I have shared responsibility for all our people in detention. If you are non-resident in the UK and you commit an offence, let's say you come from Jamaica or from Nigeria or wherever else, or from Poland or from Lithuania, then what we are seeking to do, and we're gradually getting there, is to have an arrangement with the other country that says that the prisoners should be returned to their own country to serve the rest of their sentence as soon as possible. And we're signing agreements. We've just signed an agreement with Nigeria to make sure that we return Nigerians.
Is that without consent of the prisoner or forcefully with either he or she wants?
If they, if they are resident in the UK and they have an indefinite right to remain, then of course they will remain here. But if they have limited leave to remain, it's a condition of coming here that you behave. And if you've been convicted of drugs offences or finance offences or violence offences or whatever, and you're sent to prison, then you can expect to go home. And that's completely right. Yeah. I don't have any problem with that at all. If you come to the UK and you then break the law, but you're not a UK citizen, then you can expect to go home. So we are signing, we're very clear, we're signing agreements with governments around the world to return their prisoners to them, and they will return our prisoners to us. Yeah? So if a Briton abroad in Spain or Briton abroad in Nigeria commits an offence, we would expect them to serve their prison sentence as much as possible in the UK. That's one category. Now, the next category are people who have served their prison sentence but are then being told by the courts and by the Home Office they will be deported. And we've got quite a lot of people in our prisons who've served their sentence, they've completed their sentence, but they are still held because they're waiting deportation. Yeah?
Yeah.
Again, they're not UK citizens, because we can't deport UK citizens, because this is their home, but they may be from any country of the world you like, Democratic Republic of the Congo or whatever it might be. And we are trying to make sure that we speed up that process, whether they're women or men, and that we don't hold them, because that's clearly unproductive. I met two women the other day in prison in Peterborough who are Romanian. They want to go home because they're just going to be held indefinitely until they go home, so the sooner they go home, the sooner they can start their lives again. Very clear about that. Now, we do have immigration detention centres, and there was an episode in one today reported, a place called Yarl's Wood, which is in Bedfordshire. And there was a report that some of the security people who are on a contract had improperly behaved towards some of the people in detention. And my colleague, the Minister, made clear in the House of Commons that there have been 2 examples found on camera and so on where there appears to have been inappropriate behaviour. Those people have immediately been disciplined and taken off that job. The company that employs them has been told that's unacceptable, and we have got independent inspectors going in to make sure. I mean, it is never acceptable for anything other than the highest of standards to be applied either by our public employees who work for the prison service or by any private contractors who work. But we do have some detention centres. What Liberal Democrats have done is we've made sure that they're not detention centres with lots of children in them and young people. When we came to government in 2010, Nick Clegg made us one of his first commitments to end the detention of young people, because often people come in as minors. They may come in after a war in the past in Angola or Mozambique or Sierra Leone, not certain about their age, but they're held. Ended that. We've made sure they do not get treated like adult prisoners when they've done nothing wrong other than being here illegally, which was probably nothing to do with them.
Let me put on hold, because I've got somebody waiting on the other side. Good evening, you're welcome to the program. I've got Right Honourable Simon Hughes here in the studio. Good evening, your name and where you're calling from?
I am Mike, I'm calling from Enfield.
Mike from Enfield. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead, briefly, and make your point or your question.
I just want to, speak to the MP, Mr. Hughes. I'm sorry to digress from the immigration issue or detention center you were talking about. My take is on NHS.
Okay.
What is Labour Democratic is doing regarding to NHS, because we have seen a lot of A&E being shut down, and there is a lack of NHS staff, specifically doing more than, one, person's job, and they're cutting down on staff. So what is Liberal Democratic doing about that?
Yeah. Mark, thank you very much. Greetings to Enfield, not very far away from where the studio is.
Thank you.
Just a few things, and then come back, please, if Tunde allows us. Firstly, we are the party that has made the largest commitment in money terms to the National Health Service for the next Parliament. If I'm re-elected and if we're re-elected into government, we will increase the expenditure to the amount that the man in charge of the NHS says we need to run it properly, which is £8 billion a year extra, because it's expensive to run our health service, a publicly funded health service, firstly. Secondly, even though some people make an accusation, we have slowed down and are not developing the privatisation, so-called privatisation of the NHS that happened under Labour. Now, people forget this. We've never privatised the National Health Service. We don't want to do so. We won't do so. It was a Liberal who wrote the idea of the health service. There has been sometimes a use by the health service of a private sector hospital, for example, to do an operation more quickly than it would have been done if you'd gone to your local hospital in Chase Farm, if it's near you, or Whipps Cross, or wherever it might be in North London. But this government has actually seen that reduce very little compared to what happened under Labour. But the two things that I hope will interest you, one is we haven't cut the numbers of doctors and nurses. There are more doctors and nurses in this government, and there are far fewer managers. We've cut the number of managers, we've increased the number of doctors and nurses. What's happening is not that we're closing accident and emergency units. Interestingly, the accident emergency unit at my local hospital, Guy's Hospital, was closed by Labour, not by us. It was closed when Labour were in government. What we're doing is seeing a huge increase in the number of people going to accident and emergency units because A, we have a bigger population, B, people are living longer and older people use hospitals more often, but also, sadly, many people go to accident and emergency when they don't need that level, it's not that serious an issue. They could go to the chemist, they could go to their GP, they could phone up the NHS direct number. And so what we're trying to do, Mark, is make sure people understand what's the appropriate response, but where we need the extra people to put them where. And we are committed to more doctors and more nurses. And yesterday I was with the London Ambulance Service, which covers Enfield as well as here, and my borough of Southwark, and they're just about to recruit, they told us, up to 800 new extra ambulance service personnel. So we have the capacity to deal with the health service. So 100% commitment to a public National Health Service free at the point of delivery. Better commitment than the other parties to put the money into the kitty to pay for it, and absolutely not any plans to reduce or cut or make it more difficult for people to use the health service.
Great. I've got someone else on the other side. Good evening. You're welcome to the program. Your name and where you're calling from. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for waiting. You're live. Go ahead.
Yeah. I want to ask
Your name and where you're calling from, please.
My name is Julius. I'm calling from Leeds.
From?
Leeds.
Okay, Julius from Leeds. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Your guest. He said, because Liberal Democrats, defending themselves that they didn't win the election, and that was why they couldn't, keep
Yes.
their promise. But they were in the position to defend their policy because they went into coalition with the Tories. That was a very strong position for them to defend their policy. But they failed. It was their business secretary that spearheaded the increase of tuition fee. So I don't see why they are defending themselves.
Okay,
Although,
Julia, thank you.
Be able to keep their promises because they were in a better position.
All right, Julius, you made your point. Do you have any other question on that?
No, that's the question.
All right, thank you, Julius. Let's allow...
Julia, thank you very much. Best wishes to Leeds, a great city. The answer, yes, the business secretary was in charge of university policy. What happened at the last election was that the Labour government, which, remember, the Labour government had said they would never have tuition fees and introduce them, and then said they'd never increase them, and then increase them. So they're in a slightly difficult position on this argument. The Labour government commissioned a report by a man called Lord Brown into what we should do about financing student education, university education. They didn't want that to report before the election, it reported after the election. When the coalition was agreed, we didn't know what the Brown report would say. Lord Brown reported in the late summer of 2010. He recommended no limit to tuition fees. And that's what our Conservative friends or colleagues would have wanted. That was not Vince Cable's view. And in government, you have to negotiate across parties on everything. We, in the end, couldn't persuade the Conservatives not to have tuition fees, so we negotiated a cap. And my position is that that cap will remain throughout the next Parliament. I have no intention of voting for the cap to go up. And Vince Cable negotiated the best cap he could to make sure both that we didn't allow the unlimited fees which the Tories wanted, but that we gave the universities some of the income which the universities were pushing for. And the test, Julia, I understand, of course, it wasn't what we wanted. I own up to that. But as it happens, most of the things that were on the front page of our manifesto we did deliver. And the thing that we most wanted of all, which we went into coalition negotiations to deliver, which the Conservatives never wanted, was to lift people on lower incomes out of tax. And we've done that. The threshold was 6,500 when we started. The threshold is now 10,500. If we're re-elected, it will be 12,500, which is the minimum wage, and then even potentially beyond that. So, Julia, I accept that on that one issue, but if you judge us on our record, about 3 out of 4 of every commitment we made to the electorate at the last election, we have honoured, and I think that's not a bad record given there are only 56 of us and there are 200 or 302 Conservatives. So given we only have a tenth of the votes in the House of Commons, if people want us to deliver all our policies 100%, then you in Leeds have to vote for my friend Greg Mulholland. If you're in his constituency, we have to have more Liberal Democrat
All right,
MPs.
if I do allow you to keep saying we will not be able to take more calls, but
Sorry,
I do have people waiting on the other side. Sorry, thank you for waiting. Your name and where you're calling from. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Your name?
Hi, my name is Funshaw. I'm calling from London.
Funshaw from London. Okay, go ahead, Funshaw. Where in London are you?
East London, Hackney.
East London. Okay, all right. Go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, good evening, MP Simon. I listened to your earlier explanation of views on Labour's policy on the 6,000 tuition fee if they were to win the next election, and your account was it's only the very rich student from African background that would be, that would really, benefit from the.
That's not. Can I just say, sorry, just show you. That's not my account. That's the independent assessment by people like Martin Lewis of MoneySaver.com, who is completely not party political, who said, and I could show you the references, that the only people to benefit from their proposal would be those earning over £35,000 a year. And I don't know about your family or your neighbours, but most people in my constituency don't earn more than £35,000.
All right, Funshaw, well, what's that your question quickly, because I need to go now. Oh, Funshaw is gone. Funshaw is gone, all right. Because of our time, I'd like you to briefly take a look at the diaspora participation in British politics.
Really important issue. And I hope we're going to have a chance to talk about housing, which you said was
I'm
of
afraid
interest to
we know,
many.
but let's just quickly look at this.
Well, let me do the diaspora in British politics, and then I'm going to do 2 sentences about housing, because it matters a lot to lots of your views. The first thing to say tonight, March the 3rd, the election is on May the 7th. It is no good any of your viewers who are British or Irish or Commonwealth citizens, resident of the UK, feeling frustrated about any of the politics if they don't register to vote and vote. Yeah? And the diaspora is not always very good. It's often good at making a big noise. It's not always good at making a little noise by putting a vote on the ballot paper. And there is no reason why a 19-year-old girl in Leeds or London or Birmingham or Newcastle from the diaspora can't vote as much as anybody else who is 35 and was born in London. So, first message, please vote. Secondly, we want to encourage actively more black and minority ethnic candidates. In the seat next to mine is somebody who is standing as a candidate, Michael Bukola. He's the Liberal Democrat candidate in Lewisham, Deptford. At the elections last year, in my constituency in Surrey Docks, the youngest councillor in our team was elected. His name is James Okerson. Guess where he comes from? Nigeria. First generation born in this country, or actually born in Nigeria now. He's in his 20s. He's a young social worker. Brilliant councillor. You should have seen him in Black History Month. So we absolutely are going out to recruit people, positively, proactively saying if you're from the diaspora, then if you want to be involved, you can stand as a councillor, you can become a party member, you can become an activist. Some of the people out with me every day on the doorsteps are people from Ghana and Sierra Leone and Nigeria and DRC and South Africa and Uganda and Somalia and Ethiopia and Eritrea. So there's no reason why people shouldn't be involved. And I'm going to get my one sentence in about housing.
Please, quickly.
I think the biggest issue that probably affects more of your viewers than anything else is the shortage of affordable housing in urban Britain. And we are the party, if people want more affordable housing, we're the party that says that if we really pull the stops out, we can deliver 300,000 new homes a year, and most of that needs to be affordable, not luxury homes sold abroad that nobody in Bermondsey or Southwark or Walworth or Rotherhithe or Camden or anywhere else can afford, but homes that your viewers can afford. And that for me is one of the biggest challenges for the next Parliament after the next election.
I'm afraid we might not be able to take any other question or phone call or go beyond this level. Hopefully, Ratton or someone who will create some more time in the nearest future, probably very soon, to come back to the studio so that I might be able to look at more other issues. There are issues here that we have not even touched.
If I can, I'm very happy to, and thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity.
We'll have a lot to go deeper into the issue of housing, economy, NHS,
you haven't even talked about the Nigerian presidential election.
Absolutely. I would have loved to take you up on that, but I haven't got the time. That would have been a very nice one. But I look forward to you coming back to this program at the best time that you think is most appropriate for you. Thank you for being part of the program. Ratton Samuel Hughes, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to having you at some time again. Thank you. And this is how far I can go on the program today. My name is Tony Labe. I look forward to joining you again next week. To have a very good evening.